Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dads on Life, your weekly episodic show about parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, are my co hosts, Keith Bogan, Doug Hamadike, and Chad Holloway. Today, we'll be talking about something that is timely in our area, as at one point in last week, there were over 1 million people in the tri state area, New York, New Jersey, parts of Pennsylvania and Connecticut, that were out without power for several days. I know here it was about 2 or 3. Hi, Doug's cat. And I actually sit in a different location than usual. I'm in the office at work, which had we recorded at the same time last week, I would have been in because we didn't have power at this point last week. That's what we're going to be talking about. We all have gone through these disasters where boop, boop, out go the lights, as Pat Travers once said. You go several days without power. You know, you worry about your refrigeration, you worry about your freezers, you worry about everything. It's how you deal with it with your kids. We went through trial by fire, many of us on the East Coast, during Sandy. For some of us, it was before that, but Sandy was the big one for us, where you're talking New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, into Virginia, dealt with major issues. Chad, I'm sure you're out there with the tornadoes, severe winter weather, just like we are. You have the derricos, just like we do, that come through occasionally, that will fuck everything up for days at a time. We had a derrico recently on the East Coast down in, I believe, Ocean City. So while we're a couple thousand miles apart, we do have a couple hundred miles apart, whatever. We do have similar weather systems. Of course, you don't get hurricanes like we do, but pretty much that's what we're going to be talking about. Boop, boop, out go the lights. Who wants to, the floor is open, gentlemen. Who wants to kick us
I don't know
off?
what Jericho is, because until 3 days ago, I'd never heard of this thing. That literally was a new word in my vocabulary 3 or 4 days ago. And I know, Chad, it's blowing through your area. And is it just a big windstorm? I mean, what is it?
Nope. It's not a big windstorm. It's actually pretty much resembles at times, if it starts on a coastline, it can pick up water as well and becomes pretty much like a tornado at times, except it literally is a straight line storm and swings. The entire thing will swing in one direction and can resemble a tornado without the tornadic activity.
Yeah, usually here we just call those straight line winds. But you can always tell if you've had them. We don't have them too often, but you can always tell if you've had them because in the cornfields, if it's summertime, which it usually is, the cornfields will just be laying flat on all the stalks in one direction.
Mm-hmm.
In certain areas.
So
pretty nasty little things.
Did that thing come through your area a few days ago?
We've had a couple storms here, but I haven't noticed anything out of the ordinary that gave me pause.
So it was nationwide news that it was blowing hundreds of miles north and south of Chicago. So I figured it must have hit you.
Oh, well, I've got some friends up in Chicago, and they actually were without power for at least a day, I believe, because he called me and said, "Hey, I'm sitting in this bar. I don't have power at my house, but I'm coming here to get me a sandwich and a beer and plug it in my phone." So, but most of that stuff happened north of me pretty good because I'm pretty far south in the state of Illinois. So I'm probably in the lower 1/3 is about where I am, and it was probably hit the upper third.
I tell you, my boys who are pretty well educated, and myself, same thing. We looked at each other and said, "Is the Weather Service making up yet another term that we've never heard of?"
Because you mean like bomb cyclone and stuff like? Yeah, yeah, I know.
It's all fake stuff. Let me tell you here. I'm probably not going to be able to contribute a whole lot because I happen to live in a neighborhood that is on the same power grid as a local distribution center. And I think in 25 years, we've probably lost a grand total of about 5 hours of power. And that,
Wow.
and that includes Sandy, which was 3 of those hours. We just don't lose power here. You know, the whole township around us was out of power for Sandy for 3 weeks. And my boys hardly experienced it because it was literally 3 hours. It's just this, and it's not even my entire neighborhood. We're broken into four pieces. There's four quadrants, and this quad is on their power grid, and everyone else is with the rest of the township. So everybody else in the same neighborhood was out for 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot to contribute. My sons and I like to go out and throw a baseball at the height of hurricanes. You know, we like to be out and do stupid stuff. You know, we don't go to the beach. We're not standing on the ocean or anything. We just stand in the front lawn in pouring rain or like a big snowstorm. We'll be out there throwing a baseball. We just did it last week for our latest tropical storm or whatever it was, and the neighbors are all peeking through the curtains and such. Like, what is wrong with those people? And but
No,
that's
it
what we
did.
talk about.
It actually did hit us as a hurricane, Keith. It really was. It was still a hurricane when it hit us.
Well, let's just say it was pretty windy, and we spent half the time throwing a baseball and half the time looking up at the trees that were right around us and making sure they weren't coming down on us. So it was kind of screwy and crazy, but it's kind of what my boys and I do. We love it. We have a good time with it.
Right. Doug, you had the effects of Sandy, correct?
My area did, but I'm gonna go with Keith here. Uh, Regardless of any ice storms that we've had, torrential downpours and stuff where there's been flooding in my area, like, you know, my house has not felt any of this. And it's only been my half of the block. I mean, people here were out of electric for at least a week. We had neighbors coming over, you know, and stuff like that. But our house and like next four houses next to us never lost power through anything that we've experienced. The only crisis that I could think of that we have been through was when we had an ice storm up in the Poconos, but me and my family decided to take a Thursday, Friday vacation up there. And the funny thing was is that I forgot to take off, and my wife was like, "Are you serious?" So I actually went to work that day on Thursday, and then I drove up Thursday night, and we got hit with a storm, a big snowstorm in the Poconos. So as soon as I started to see the snow, I was like, it's just going to snow a little bit. And I heard somebody say, they're closing down the highway. So I told my kids, get out of the water park. We're leaving now.
The water park.
Yeah. One of those indoor ones up there, you know, Camelback.
Okay.
Right.
And we went to leave, checked out, got in the car. And my wife's like, you ain't going nowhere. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I tried to go down the driveway, and they already plowed the snow into the driveway, and we couldn't even leave the resort. So we turned back around, but of course they're getting all the weekend people now. So now they got double the amount of people that are supposed to be there, and the power went out there. So now they got no power, twice as many occupants, and it was just like totally like chaos. No elevator, so I had to carry all our stuff up to the 5th floor. And coming back down, it was like one of those things where the line started already for dinner. And my wife is there talking to some people. I'm like, oh, good. You're like in the front of the line. She's like, oh, no, I'm just talking to them. I'm not in line. I'm like, what are you doing? So people are already like hoarding water. People are like robbing like things from the like little convenience store inside there and stuff. And it was like totally crazy. So we ate our dinner, you know, and it was, of course, free because all the freezers were down. They were losing everything.
Sure.
And they were just giving everything away. And we had a fine dinner, but then, of course, there's no lights except for emergency lights and all. And the funny thing was just that I went down to the mini golf course, and I went up to the 18th hole, and I pulled out some golf balls, and me and the kids started playing with the emergency lights on mini golf. People were like, what are you doing? You can't do that. I'm like, well, there ain't nobody telling me that I can't do it. You're like,
Yeah,
well,
really.
golf balls. I said, just go stick your hand down the 18th hole. I don't know.
So how long ago was this, and how old were the kids at that point?
12 and 9. It was like 2 years ago.
Let's say so. It wasn't that long ago. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is the thing. This is the thing that the things are going to remember when they're in their 80s, for crying out loud. These are the stories, throwing baseballs and hurricanes and playing miniature golf in ice storms. I mean, this is great. This is what parenting should be, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Loony.
So,
But I remember somebody told me a long time ago, they said, nervous captain, nervous crew, right? So always, even in stressful situations, you want your kids to feel comfortable, even if you're scared to heck.
Yeah.
So you always try to be comfortable and be calm and tell them, everything's okay and just give them instructions. But, like what Doug did, that's awesome, because then, it's like, Dad's not nervous about this. Let's go play a little golf.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, my sons and I have driven in some, because we travel an enormous amount, usually for sporting events, and we've driven in some pretty horrific weather conditions,
Oh,
snowstorms,
sure.
ice storms, and all that. And I probably take it a lot more casually than I should, but just like Chad says, I mean, they're seeing me basically have a good time with it. And when they were much younger, they didn't realize that we were really kind of at risk when we were doing some of that stuff. But they would never know it. So they grew up thinking that you got to be careful, you have to be smart, but you can have a lot of fun with it.
Sure.
Yeah, I remember one time, speaking of snowstorms, and this was my parents. We lived out in the country at the time, and my mom said, "Oh, well, you can go into town, but you have to stay in town because we have a blizzard coming." So my buddy and I are in his parents' Chevette, and he goes, "Hey, let's drive outside of town." I'm like, "Okay, let's go." So he's driving at first, so we pull into this road that we're going down, and there's a snowplow stuck, and we just kind of look at it as we're going by, and we just kept plugging along. So we end up getting stuck on the road. So like I'm pushing and he's pushing. We finally get it out. But then at that point, I'm driving and he's in the back waving me on, but it's blowing so hard. I'm concerned he's going to get disoriented in the wind, but he finally catches up. We eventually got out. I mean, it was just kind of a stupid kid thing that turned out okay, but it could have been pretty ugly. But that was when I was young. But now, since I've grown up a little bit and since I've aged, I should say, I don't know that I've matured that much, but I remember one year going to Christmas, and we got out on the roads, and we're supposed to be there for dinner and all this kind of stuff, and the roads were so slick, and the traffic's going 20 miles an hour, and I just and I could just tell it was slick, and I'm just like, we're not going to do this. It's not worth putting our lives at risk, because there are people zooming by, at 60 miles an hour, and it's just like, it is literally a sheet of ice. I said, no, I'm throwing in the towel on this one. We're going to go home. I hate that your mom, to my wife at the time, I hate that your mom cooked this lunch and all this stuff, but it's not worth putting you guys at risk. And, it was a fight at that time for me, I mean, with her, but it's the same. I would make that decision again in a second, just because, especially when you have all the other cars out there, and there are a bunch of buffoons out there driving bad and in the bad conditions,
Mm-hmm.
So, but to tell you the truth, I don't have that many things where we've had a crisis. When I've been with my kids, I mean, I've been through Hurricane Andrew, which that definitely was a crisis for us, and it got pretty ugly and was pretty scary. Then I think the other thing, we've had a couple of ice storms where we were without power for a little while. And then I used to work at a big hospital. We had like 1,200 beds that we were licensed for, and then we were also next door. We had kind of a sister hospital for children, the children's hospital, and there was a fire there, and so I was the person in charge that night at the big house, and so we had to transfer over children from the neonatal ICU, from the NICU.
Wow.
And that was super stressful. One of the babies died. They found not because of the move, but it was just in kind of a downward turn anyway. But that was the most stressful, was kind of coordinating all of that, because that was back before cell phones, those kinds of things. And again, it wasn't with my child, but it certainly was something that gave me a lot of stress at the time.
Sure.
Seeing an ambulance open up, even though it was just bringing the babies from across the street full of, nurses holding babies, and
Yeah.
telling him bring all the bassinets you can down from the nursery to receive these kids. And we didn't have. I mean, we weren't a children's hospital. We were an adult hospital, but it was just a bad situation. I was stressed out beyond belief for that. But I haven't had anything too awful stressful with my son. You know, with that. The only other thing I can think of with him was we were at a Walmart of all places one time, and he was out playing, and he was with his stepsister, and I don't know what they did, but something happened, and she came back. She goes, "I can't find Frankie," and I'm like, "What? What?" And they're probably 6 or 7 at the time. So, and I know he's just like not feeling good about this, and I'm not feeling good about it. So then we start looking around, start calling his name, couldn't find him. Finally, we go up to the front, and there he is. He's up at the front. He's crying, going, "Dad!" I'm like, "Come here." I'm like, "Why'd you take off?" And he goes, I just was looking at this for a minute. I turned around, and you guys are gone. So that was, I mean, it was horrible for that time, but in the scheme of things, it wasn't something, you know, I didn't think at that time. I mean, it crossed my mind, but I really didn't think that somebody had taken him at that point, because we'd gone through all of the protocols about he's going to yell and he's not going to let anybody take him and those kinds of things. So I felt pretty comfortable about that, but still it was stressful.
I remember walking in Princeton. Justin was probably 3 or 4 years old. He's 21 now. And it was that time where you start to experiment with not quite holding the hand all the time, just to see if they can stand next to you, just to see if they might take a couple of steps with you. Sure enough, on a half-crowded street, he somehow walked straight away. The moment I experimented and looked my left, and he's over here, and it probably was 2 minutes of the worst hell of my life.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know where he was amongst the people, and 2 minutes later, he's just standing there probably 15, 20 feet away, and probably more like 60 feet away. But
yeah.
I think we've all gone through that at one time or another. It's what is that? That's 17 years ago, and I still get a pit in my stomach when I think about it, because I can picture myself right there like it was 5 seconds ago.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yep. It's no fun at all.
No. That was probably that could be in the top 3 most awful moments, maybe even the worst of his life. I mean, I can't even imagine anything that was worse than that moment. And he would never remember it, of course, because he was way too young. Mm-hmm. But his mother remembers. I wonder why.
Now, I remember Sandy pretty vividly. It was an interesting situation. We had gone through several situations, several days of issues, and we went from pretty much being in a situation where we were just prepared for it as best as we could be, but it went just like that. We were sitting there on the couch or whatever it was on a Sunday morning or a Monday morning, and out the power went. So then you get that situation where you go, okay, now what? I'm a father of a 1.5-year-old. It's like, okay, what do we do from here? So things got dicey for a little bit, obviously. I mean, but you just sit there for, collect yourself, go, all right, first half day goes through, and then you get to the first night. You go downstairs and do whatever you can downstairs, make sure the freezers are okay, fridge is okay. Your neighbor has a generator, so you run a couple of cords off to keep the fridges going. And luckily I had a a Mac, and went through a little box of whatever DVDs I could find. And it just so happens that the box that I found was the 4 movies of Indiana Jones. So,
Perfect for a 1.5-year-old. Yeah, that's great.
like, she knew. She was asleep by the time we put it on at 8 o'clock at night anyway, and slept mostly through the night. The only thing is, yeah, it was November, and well, late October, early November. It got cold at night. That was about it, but you bundle it, you put an extra layer on, or you wore flannel pajamas for a little while. And I remember it was pretty much 4 days. It went out on Monday, or actually went out on Sunday. Monday we got up and went to work, and power was out here as well. Same thing Tuesday, same thing Wednesday. Thursday we came up here and we noticed the light was on outside. Well, if the light's on, guess what? So we came in and started doing what we had to do here, because we knew we were manufacturing on Friday morning. So it was a little disheartening. My wife had gone back to work because on Tuesday in Edison, which was weird because they weren't running on a generator. For some reason, I work in Elizabeth, I lived in Old Bridge. Edison is kind of right in the middle. Their power was on, and the two polar extremes, neither one of us had power. So Thursday morning comes, we get here, do a couple of things, turn the lights on. Finally, get a little bit warmer because we, have some heat, and then turn around and come home. And obviously, there's still no power. And I hear that the Wegmans down the block, or not down the block, a couple miles away, has a generator. So I go to Wegmans, and I'm walking around Wegmans about to check out, and my cell phone rings, and it's my father. I'm like, okay, he's going to talk about tomorrow. He goes, hey, dummy, you left your porch light on. And it doesn't dawn on me. I'm like, oh, shit, I'll go home and I said, what'd you say? He goes, stupid, you left the porch light on. I said, wait, for you to know that the porch light is on? He goes, yeah. I said, oh, okay. Came home, and, the heat was going, and it was still cold in the house. But I mean, in this area, there were people that were still out weeks later. Oh, yeah. Some in Old Bridge were forced out of their homes, and Sandy was almost 10 years ago. They've never returned to their homes. Down the shore, people have never returned home. That's the thing that, that hits. And when the power went out here, well, not here, the power here was out for about 5 minutes, and then it came back on. Luckily, because going through that again might have been tough. At home, it went out on Monday afternoon. Was out Tuesday afternoon. Was out Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday was a little different from it being summer to almost winter, because it was it was like 60 degrees in the house, maybe a little cooler than that when Sandy hit. When we had the outage last week, the house hit 80 pretty quickly. That's a little bit of a polar opposite that you kind of go, you know what? I kind of wish we had the temperature we had when it was Sandy. It's a little bit easier to tolerate when, especially with 2 kids. But and then somebody sent me a meme. It was a kid screaming, Dad, the batteries in the flashlight don't work. Or my tablet ran out of batteries. And there's a picture of Indiana Jones holding the torch. So I started. That's probably the hardest I've laughed in a while seeing that, because I started thinking about watching Indiana Jones during Sandy, and you're never totally prepared for something like that when it happens, but you get that memory that once the power goes out, it's like that switch goes on, and you're like, all right, here we go again. We've had it, for snowstorms. We had the last 2 years, we've had snowstorms where it's knocked out the power, which for us is something we're not used to. But not growing up, but working in a radio station. I worked for a radio station for 5 years, and you get a card when you first get there, and you get a card every year that says you're essential. I actually still have my card in in the house somewhere that says you're an essential worker, and your company will put you up in hotels, and you live in a hotel for a couple of days if you have major snowstorms. I luckily only lived, which there were a couple of times I absolutely should have taken advantage of it and stayed in the hotel, but I stayed home and would drive to work. Some days at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, to try to get there for 5:30. Or the one stupid mistake I made was having to work on a Saturday night after we had about a foot of snow, driving all the way down to Howell, which is about 20 minutes south of my house, 25 minutes south of my house, and then having to drive from Howell to New Brunswick, which is 15 minutes north of my house. That wasn't the most brilliant idea. But going up the major roads wasn't so bad. Going up 9 was okay. But once you get on those side streets, and that's the worst thing about it, is trying to drive in something like that. But again, so whatever it is, an all-wheel drive vehicle, which at the time wasn't an all-wheel drive vehicle. I had a rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, I believe, Chevy Monte Carlo, which, if you know anything about that car, it ain't built for the snow or the rain or anything. But now, even with a Subaru Outback, driving and stuff like that in conditions like that isn't always fun. But like I said, you get the power goes out, boop, boop, out go the lights, the switch goes on in your head, and you just start hunkering down and preparing for what is ahead of you. It's a little easier each time.
But if there are other types of emergencies, it's a whole different story when we talk about COVID. Not to get into COVID, but how do you handle...
We're going to avoid this today, but apparently not.
But how do you handle a change in circumstance where you have to direct your kids on how to behave differently because of circumstances in the world around them? And it's different for Doug and Jason than it is for me, for Chad and myself, because your kids are staying home.
Right.
It's even more dicey when your kids are going away, like mine are 2 days and 5 days, and Chad's are too. That gets a little really weird because I have to take up my hat off, if you will. Kudos to Justin and Jeremy's mother, who has encouraged them to create a go bag in case they have to exit their college environments quickly.
Right.
And that's not just for COVID. It's obviously, Justin's a fourth-year student now, and his first 3 years has been a hurricane every September in Columbia, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So if he had to get out of there quickly, he would have something prepared. He'd just grab a bag and go. So something I didn't think about, she did. So probably a smart idea. Mm-hmm. And I know, Chad, you're nodding your head because you're sending your kid off to school, and you're like, I'm not going to be there if something goes bad. what if my younger one's in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, and they call and say, well, your kid's got COVID. What am I going to do? If he's, do they have set it up so he can be isolated? Is it a circumstance where he'll need to be hospitalized? Will he need to come home? Dealing with weather issues or emergency issues is a lot different when they're 900 miles away.
Mhm.
Right. That's a bit of an exaggeration. Justin's 685 miles, and Jeremy's probably about 600. But it's not like, even with all the driving I do, it's not exactly around the corner.
No,
So
not
it's
at all.
problematic. And I know, Chad, isn't your kid going to Florida?
Arizona.
This was Arizona.
One of those hot states. I can never remember
Yeah.
which.
Yep.
Yeah, so you're a guaranteed flight. You can't even hop in a car and drive 9 hours to do it.
Yeah. And it's much farther than 9 hours by car.
But it would
How
be.
far is it by car, Chad?
I think it's about 20 hours, I want to say.
Oof, that's what I thought. Jeez.
Or pretty close, I think, with breaks and those kinds of things. Because we drove it to pick up his stuff in May. I'll never drive it again.
That's pretty much Route 66 almost, isn't it?
I didn't pay too much attention. His mom drove most of the way, so I just kind of sat in the back and slept as much as I could.
Yeah,
I know. It seems like it could, like that might be the. We're getting off topic, but
it very well could be. And once he goes though, I start traveling because I'm here because he's here. So I'll be in Florida, I'll be in Colombia, and it's not as easy to get around for me, to just get on a plane and get there.
right.
And Jason, you say we're getting off topic, but in a way we're not, because dealing with Sandy and dealing with other storms and hurricanes and big time snowstorms and all that when the kids were younger laid the groundwork for how they will handle adversity in their environment in their older years. Things like how to avoid other people, to stay safe in COVID, and what to do if they were to come down with it, or if roommates come down with it. To me, there's a very solid line connection there.
That wasn't what I meant by getting off topic. I meant of discussing roads. That's what I meant of getting off topic.
One of the things that.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say a different point that I was going to think about too was that also, like, how we're all talking about how basically it all impacts the dads generally, and decision making, and what are we going to explain to our kids, because not necessarily was it a crisis, but last year around, well, just prior to Thanksgiving, we were going to have everybody over. And we lost our furnace, and we couldn't replace it for, like, I don't know, it was nearly a week, And some of those days got cold and all. And it's one of those things where it's like, all right, the first couple days, it's like, all right, it's cold in the house. It's, down to your 60s, then it starts getting to the 50s. And you're like, well, at what point, as a dad, do I say, hey, we have to abandon house and go to rent a hotel room, or go to a relative's house, or do we stick it out, or, I have to be here, your mom works from home from here, or, I got to be here for the furnace guy, or, when you make these decisions, like what to do also is could be a stressful thing for dads to, either decide to make a change and do something, or just sit there and stick it out. And then, if your decision was right or wrong, it's going to come back to you eventually. Like, if yeah.
We had that happen actually Valentine's Day. Actually, it's happened to us twice. Valentine's Day, Delana was young, real young at that point. And something happened with the furnace. Couldn't remember exactly what it was, but somebody came. No, actually, my father came, went downstairs, and he takes the thing off, and he's looking around, and he just takes a screwdriver and taps the solenoid right on. The other one was, and this was just but it ended up being another issue, but it was partly we had, we thought the furnace was going, and there was a couple different things, and it wasn't lighting, and it just going crazy. Things are going nuts in the house. So the guy comes and he goes to walk down the steps, and the first thing he does, he looks up, and the way our thing is set up, we have the gas switch right above the steps. Keith knows exactly what I'm talking about. You've probably seen the gas switch. Well, he looks and he goes, well, there's your first problem. Walks over and flips the gas switch back on. Apparently going down the steps, Delana turned off the gas switch. There was another problem with the furnace, and that was a quick fix. It wasn't a cheap fix, but it was a quick fix. The guy had the part and replaced it. But yeah, that's one. I mean, that's always something. That's always a worry of a furnace going or something like that, or your gas, a gas leak or carbon monoxide leak or anything like that. Anything can be scary like that. Before the power went out, we had we had two power outages in a row. We had one that was very short term, like 3 or 4 hours, but as soon as it went out, something started happening, and there was a beep. And at least thought it was the alarm, the alarm on the house alarm beeping. And I went downstairs to go I have a big flashlight, and I knew where it was. It's a magnet one. It was sticking on the fridge. I was like, okay, there's a clear path. I know where it is. I'll go downstairs, get the flashlight. Go downstairs, I get the flashlight, and I realize the beep is downstairs. What the hell's that? I look at the wall and I see the light flash, and I said, what's over there? So I walk my way through and find and go, oh, it's a carbon monoxide detector.
Lovely.
What's wrong with that? Take it out, and I flip it over, and the thing says 2009 on it. And I went, okay, and I open it and see the battery. The battery expired in December for the back. So the power went out. I was like, all right. So I decided, all right, what the hell? I'll spend whatever I'm going to spend. I'm going to change the carbon monoxide detector, put up there's no smoke detector in the basement at the time. I said, all right. So I'm going to put in, and there was no smoke detector upstairs, which is an attic right now, but I figured, okay, I'll put one up there. I'll put one in the basement, and I'll put the carbon monoxide detector in the basement too. And then the power goes out this week. I'm like, well, I'm glad I did that and didn't wait. So, but yeah, I mean, there's always that you pretty much. I think every father, when it comes to something like that, you kind of do have that Indiana Jones with the torch moment, so to speak.
And the whip.
And the whip, yes. Sometimes you need the whip. I'm not. Oh, geez, I opened that can of worms. Sometimes you need the whip. I'm just going to say it. And I'm going to try to move on from that as quickly as I can. But because that could go in a completely different direction if we're not careful.
Well, and I'll help you move on, Jason. So as Doug was saying earlier, like with being the dad and making the decisions, sometimes I think that's difficult. And, because there's always going to be something that happens that we have to make a decision about, whether it's as parents or whether it's as the dad in the best interest of the family. But the other thing that I really try to convey is I'm big time about prevention. And if you can prevent something, prevent it from happening. So try not to put yourself in bad situations. And even when we travel internationally, if we're going to Costa Rica or somewhere like that, and I'm with my son, anywhere outside the country, I'll say, hey, listen, I know you like to take some risks or whatever and kind of play around, but I said, be especially careful now with how you behave, because in Costa Rica we don't know where the hospitals are.
Right.
It can just be a big nightmare. So there's some of that's like, so be a little more be a little more careful than you usually are with what you're doing, so you don't end up in the hospital. And I'll do the same. But some of the stuff, well, and even like hurricanes, after going through Hurricane Andrew, like I won't go through a hurricane again. I'm like, if a hurricane's coming, I'm moving out with my family. We're just going to go out of the path, and that's that. That all my stuff can be destroyed because that was too much, And to have
Right.
a little kid, so for us at the time, our power went out for 2 weeks, and not only was it that, and the day after the hurricane, people were so nice. A lot of the stop signs had blown out of the ground. Many of the stop lights were gone. There was no power. And people were like, you'd be on a busy street, and people like wave you on and that kind of stuff. Tell you what, the second day, everybody's out for themselves. And, I remember learning about this in college, was this anomie, like it's a time of normlessness when there's no like social conventions, no like kind of social rules, if you will. And that's what we had, because it was everybody for themselves. It was kind of anarchy, if you will. And there's nothing in the stores. A lot of the stores still didn't have power, and in those situations, it's a lot different. So if my power goes out here, we can figure something out. But if it's a mass disaster on a scale like that, it's like that's just a bad deal. So I try to avoid those, and I have a couple of friends who live in Florida now, and one actually heeds my advice, and he's pretty conservative anyway. It's my cousin actually, so he'll send his wife and his 4 kids up north out of the path, and he'll just stay with the house or whatever. But and hopefully this stuff has been conveyed effectively to my son as well, that he thinks ahead and says, let's prevent something bad from happening. But if something does happen, let's try to be prepared for that, making sure we have cash on us, making sure we've got extra food in the house and those things. But, as you guys know, when somebody announces there's going to be a hurricane, there's a rush for the groceries, for the grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
And, all the fresh water is gone, all the, when by the time you get there, even if you leave right away, it's hard to get that stuff unless you have some stuff stored up already. So, at that time I had a little bitty tiny Weber charcoal grill,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
we lived on black beans and rice for about 2 weeks. It was not pretty, but and that time the police are gone. We had an alarm on our apartment. The alarm's not working, and even if it did work, the police aren't coming. So, just things were bad, and there was looting then as well. After that, because there was no power and everybody was kind of taking care of their own stuff and away from the stores and those kinds of things as well. So, but it's just how do you prepare them, and are they prepared for it? And everybody hates to see their kids go through this stuff, but and there is no formula for this stuff, right? I mean, you can try to be prepared, but a lot of it's on the fly decision making.
Right. You were saying about the stores. There's a comedian who has made quite a career for himself for when one bit he had during a snowstorm. He's actually from New York originally, but he lives in Manalapan. His name is Victy Potato, who had a bit where he did something during a snowstorm of, I got to get the bread and the milk. And the bit became enormous. Now he's one of the most sought after comedians in the country at this point. And it was just one little thing where he just came up with it. Yeah, but it speaks volumes about, hurricanes, snowstorms. Even well, yes, very much so during the early stages of COVID-19. A lot of the stores still don't have several items. There's still shortages in some places of hand sanitizer, Lysol. Lysol. People are selling Lysol, like we were saying, on eBay for like ridiculous. I believe it was my therapist that said they sold 4 bottles of Lysol for something like $120 on. Somebody sold $120, 4 bottles of Lysol for $120 or something like that on eBay. And that's one thing that comes up when you have a storm is you have these bastard people who own stores or people who own gas stations who price gouge. That is a huge problem that has never been addressed during storms, is price gouging in supermarkets. Like the chain ones really won't do it so much, but in COVID, some of the chains, the prices have risen. And it's just, but the truth is, when it's all said and done, when COVID finally becomes a thing of the past, the prices in these stores, they ain't going back down. These are going to be the prices. And it's these sons of bitches trying to make money and screwing the American public in some cases, which is wrong. And I remember in Sandy here with the gas rationing. And then you had the guys which a lot of them, thankfully, are out of business now, who price gouged and raked the poor people, the poor public in this state and in Pennsylvania and New York and parts of Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut over the coals during Sandy. And luckily, they did eventually get caught and did pay the price for whether it was being fined so heavily that it put them out of business, or going out of business because the people smartened up and said, fuck you, and stopped doing business with them. But then there are companies that go out of their way, go above and beyond in a crisis. As much shit as they get, and as many problems as there are with people in society, things they go through. During, I forgot what hurricane it was exactly, but you had companies like Anheuser-Busch, Sam Adams, Coors. I know Yingling did it, I believe, where they just can water. They'll just send water straight, purify the water, send it straight to their canning line. Tito's Vodka was making hand sanitizer to help people, to help alleviate the shortages that are out there. So I mean, for as evil as there is, there's good as well in some people in aspects like that.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we saw after Hurricane Andrew too, is people on the side of the roads selling generators for double, triple what they usually cost, and it just brings out all the crooks, and people come out going, oh well, I can cut up all your trees, but you got to give me a deposit, and then they get the deposit and they run with it. They don't show up, they don't do the work, and it's just a bad deal. And even now in Columbia, that's one thing my wife was saying. In Columbia, she said the prices are going up in the grocery stores as well, kind of to your point. And that they've probably gone up 10 or 15% over the course of COVID.
All right. It's a nasty situation. It's we have people who speculate about what things were like during the Spanish flu epidemic, but no one knows. I mean, all you can do is look in a book and read something. People who were alive in 1918, there's no one alive that is going to be able to remember anything that happened in 1918.
Yep.
Because you'd be 102 years old just to have been born at that point.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, we just have these speculations because, but I mean, price gouging is unfortunately, probably since really the gas shortages in the 70s. That's something that has been, I'm sure it happened before that, but that's probably the first real major example where price gouging happened.
Yeah, I agree.
Keith, I don't know why he's on mute, but I don't think he even realizes he's on mute. There you go. Thank you, Keith.
And our kids get to watch all this crap happen. My kids have been pretty vocal about that sort of thing. They're tracking all the news in regards to. You're right. The prices are on average 10 to 15% higher. There's been a lot of interruptions to supply chain. There's a lot of. I mean, every time I go into a store nowadays, it seems like it's half picked over. Even if I go in at 8 in the morning, the shelves they're not empty by any means, but you're used to Walmarts and Targets and grocery stores, relatively full shelves. There's no stores that are like that anymore. So
Right.
supply chain has definitely been impacted. Things have been reduced. And I think some of those prices will drop back down for competitive reasons
So,
when we get past all this some point. Not anytime soon. But I don't think it'll happen for probably a year. They'll stay artificially inflated. It's just like gas prices. There's a conflict in the Mideast. They go up 30 cents in a week. The conflict is resolved. It takes 6 months for all that to come back down. So
right.
it will take a little while for it to come back down, but I think a lot of it will recede. If the COVID crisis ends, let's say hypothetically in 6 months, it'll take a year and a half, 2 years for the prices to settle back down to where they were,
Right.
with inflation built in and all that stuff. But my kids have been watching this stuff intently, and you'll see this as your kids start to get older, how they will pay attention to this stuff, and they'll be the ones teaching you, because they know more about all the even price shifts and supply chain and economic factors and all that stuff. They know more than I do, because they have resources that they look at, which is rather remarkable.
Right.
So I wonder who's teaching who how to handle potential emergencies, and who's teaching who to have the go bags. Are they teaching me this stuff? It's probably true.
Right.
And we have arrived at a moment of silence. Who died? Wait a minute, who died? I think this is one of the most entertaining conversations. I think, to think about how kids react to emergencies and severe weather issues and snow days when you have to stay home from work. It's the most entertaining to me because of the difference in the ages of our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the spectrum of different responses that there would be based on those differences. I mean, how old is Frankie? I forget, how old is he now?
He's 19.
Oh, so he's not the oldest one. I guess Justin in our group is the oldest one at 21. And between 6 years old and 21 years old, the range of different learnings and responses and lessons and all that is just remarkable. I think it's highlighted even more in this particular conversation than it would be in most of our previous podcasts.
Right.
Yep.
Right. That's very true. It's I know for the girls, they handled last week's weather issues as well as could be. I mean, we ended up staying at my in-laws on Wednesday. They've been there off and on for the last couple of months because Elise had to go back to work, and they stay at grandma's occasionally, and grandma helps, and it was what it was. But I mean, obviously, everybody just wanted to kind of go home quickly. Luckily, we were able to get home quick enough. But I mean, there were people who, up until even this week in this area, Some may not even be on yet from last week's storms. We have been in unprecedented times, honestly, since the best way to say it, we've been in an unprecedented time since September 11th. We have never been, after September 11th, besides from Pearl Harbor, two very different events on a similar scale, but you have, since September 11th, there's been so many events and so many different things that have gone on that it seems like every time you turn around in this country and on this planet to an extent, there's something else going on. And you start to wonder sometimes, in the scheme of things, where is there an end to a means? Where does it stop? Where does it kind of, okay, stop the world, I want to get off? Where does that, is the whole thing trying to get this planet to come together in a way and learn from these examples that get thrown at us? And I know the point is to try to evolve. Unfortunately, it seems to an extent, as time goes on, we notice more and more there's a de-evolution in society. Are we anywhere near the point that one of these events is going to break down into a worldwide chaos theory, chaotic situation, anarchist situation? I'm starting to think we may be getting to that point. The question is,
worldwide or countrywide?
Worldwide at this point, I'm starting to think. I'm very much so in this country. I mean, I had just said to somebody earlier, somebody asked, not to bring politics into this, but if we went and elected, just went and elected an entire class of independent politicians, would it bring unity? And I said, no. I said, because we had a very close to unified society, as close as we've probably gotten in a very long time, when September 11th happened. Once that camaraderie ended, that may have very well been the last chance for full-on near unity in this country. And the me first mentality that existed before that has come back and taken over this country in spades now. Unfortunately, we may have already passed the point of no return to where there's no going back to that chance to find that unifying moment. If it ever happened, it could take something that is even worse to the magnitude of what happened on September 11th to change this de-evolution of American society that seems to be going on.
We need space aliens to attack.
Pretty much.
So we unify everybody.
You're possibly not far off at this point. Obviously not to get into conspiracy theories, but you might be close. So we've finished the show going on slightly off topic from where we started, but we've had one of our better discussions, one of our more unique discussions. I think this pretty much is a good wrap point. unless anybody else has anything else to add.
I think we'll have part B of this after the kids, in Chad's, in my case, after the kids go off to college, and how the world reacts to the ongoing COVID challenges and how they react now that they're kind of on their own and they have to be responsible for their own safety. So there may be a follow-up on this show in that regard.
Well, you'll have that at the same time. You'll have that aspect. You'll have from Doug and I as we watch. We personally, right now, are not sending the girls to school. We are going to do remote. And as we were on the show, I just saw something pop up that North Bergen, one of the towns in New Jersey, one of the first ones, I believe, has voted to go to start the year full remote. So that will be something that will be visited as we now approach the beginning of the school year. So, anyone else? Bueller?
Along those lines, only really quickly, I probably already said, the school that we decided to send the boys to, Good Shepherd in Northampton, has so far an excellent plan, 4 pages long. They had town hall meetings and all, and the kids will be going full time, and it'll be 5 days a week, unlike Old Bridge, which is like a quarter of one day. But yeah, we'll see how it works out. They have it all kind of thought out that all the classes will, if there is any moving from classroom to classroom, it'll be done at different times, offset times, so that there's no kids in the hallway together at the same time. They'll all be in straight lines, everybody wear masks, all that information. Teachers will be teaching multiple subjects, so in theory, we'll see how it works,
Now, Good Shepherd being a Catholic, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll report on that. We'll see right after we start at the end of August.
Okay. So I believe that pretty much wraps us up for this week. We will see. Obviously, we have been through an ever-evolving, ever-changing society with what's going on in the U.S. right now. And we will see what the next couple of weeks brings. We usually just sometimes randomly come up with a topic literally minutes before we start talking about what we're talking about, but it always ends up becoming a very interesting discussion. I have thoroughly enjoyed what we've done so far and look forward to what the future holds for Dads on Life. From all of us here, take care, everybody.
Take care. See you guys.
Safe travels, Chad.
Thank you.
Same to you guys. Oh, both of you.
Thank you.
You too.